This is Live 90.5. This is the Hit Mix Show, top hits, classic dance tracks, right through till 12 o'clock. And this is a special hour to a very special lady. And I'll just start and say this. Mama Lena, an Italian icon. And it's interesting to know that she was 89 and she passed away on the 12th of September 2003. And the last statement that Mama Lena told us was this. And what an interesting statement. Life passes, but good deeds remain. That was Mama Lena. But before we talk about Mama Lena, just remember her name wasn't really Mama Lena. It was Lena Gustini and DINO Gustini. They were an absolute fantastic couple, and they made it all happen for the Italian migrants in this country. I want to welcome to the microphone Angelina Rossi and Peter Ciani.
Hi everyone. So honoured to be here on Dom's Hit Mix show and honouring Mama Lena. She was, I just listened to Mama Lena growing up, and that's the reason I do radio, just listening to her beautiful, sweet voice. And we want to welcome Peter. Peter, hi.
Thank you. Oh, what a special thought from Dominic. Fantastic.
Yes.
Peter, do you remember these words when in Mama Lena's days?
Those words are written in every medal she gave away. Because she gave away a lot of medal, La vita passa, eccetera, eccetera, no? And that was in English and in Italian. So the words you said, they were just written everywhere, yeah.
And this is one thing I want to remind you. When she started the show, do you remember this? Buonasera, Australia, Mama Lena here.
Yeah, Buonasera, Australia.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
There was Mama Lena was the first, I'd say, one of the first, if not the first, one of the few first that started the Italian Voice on air in Australia.
She broke down the barriers and allowed other people to move forward, didn't she?
Fantastic. You know, she done so good for so many that who, if anyone is listening, they know about it.
Oh, there's people listening. We've had a lot of messages on Facebook and whatever. But before we go ahead, Peter, I just want to do a little thing about me because of my memories of Mama Lena, and then I want to ask you about your memories of Mama Lena, and we can all join into this. But let me tell you about my memories of Mama Lena. Migrated in 1956 on the Marconi with my mum and dad and 3 other brothers, and we I don't remember much about that, but my brothers do because they were sick all the way through all those months of the trip, and they got into Australia. Dad moved forward, went into working on the roads. Then after working on the roads, he bought a fruit shop, and just like a lot of Italians and Greeks did in those days. And there was one thing I always remember about those days. Every night we used to get around the lounge room, and we used to have, you'll probably remember this, Peter, you used to have those beautiful HMV and Chrysler stereo units. And they were gigantic. Remember those big speakers, beautiful sound that came out of them. And we'd sit down and we'd hear those magic words, Buonasera, Australia, Mama Lena. And what it installed into my family and to me was the stories about people and the help she gave to everybody in Sydney and whatever. And it became Australia-wide. We'll hear about that in the story when we put it on. And then another thing which I want to bring you into this, Peter, which I've never thanked you about, but I want to tell you about. I got involved with Peter Ciani. Everybody wanted to listen to Peter Ciani music. I couldn't do a wedding, I couldn't do a function without an Italian person coming up and saying, I want Peter Ciani's song, Tarantella, or something like that. So I got to know you, and you were the owner of Minstrel Records, I think, at the time, and I absolutely convinced you to do a show called The Rendezvous Show, and later on it was the Evening Rendezvous, and then became the Rendezvous Show at 2RDJ, and Angelina knows where 2RDJ is. But basically we were there for 9 years, but this is the one bit I want to tell you on air, which I've never told you. One night we're on air, and Mama Lena was still doing her thing, getting around, trying to solve problems for, as far as political problems and everything for the Italian migrants. And you said to me, you know, we should have Mama Lena onto our radio show. And that was like, you know, the best day of my life. I said, here, I'm going to meet this icon, Mama Lena. And the person, and if it wouldn't have been for Peter Ciani, I would have never met her. And apart from that, we went to dinner with her, had time with the last couple of years. We had such a great time, and she was always professing the causes of the Italian migrants. So today, thank you, Peter, for making my day. That night when we first met Mama Lena.
You know that was done with a lot of pleasure. I thank you for coming and looking for me, and
you're a difficult person to convince.
Put me on behind the microphone on 2 hours. That was whatever the session was, you know.
Yeah, but we enjoyed it, didn't we? We actually brought back all the memories of. I said, look, there's not enough Italian music, and this is where Angelina comes in. There's not enough Italian music of the old days to keep the dream alive. And this is what I was saying to Angelina the other day. That's what she's doing in her own way, because of the situation, Mama. She's keeping the dream alive.
Yes, and that's what I love doing.
If you remember, when once she wanted to come, because she was asking, she wanted to come on my show, and on our show actually. And one day DINO rang me up and said, "Oh, we're coming tomorrow. We're coming to the show." I said, "Can you make say next week?" Okay. She said, "Yeah, okay." He said next week. Oh, fine, that's fine. I was writing a song for Mama Lena. See,
an amazing song it is.
And that because it was her birthday. That's why he wanted to bring her there to celebrate her birthday. So I said, okay. When then she came, in the meantime, I recorded a song, Omaggio a Mamma Lena. And when they came, while we were there talking, then the song went on.
Yeah, and
you should say, you remember.
I do. And actually, when we played it for her, you don't remember what happened, do you? She started crying.
Crying, that's right. You should.
She started crying.
It was the biggest surprise for her she ever had. Yeah.
And Dino reached over to her and gave her a big cuddle when she was crying, listening to Omaggio a Mamma Lena.
They were a very close couple, yeah.
They were, and that's what I was going to say, is just a couple of memories of that. Tell us a little bit about Dino. You had a lot to do with them. And then we'll put the actual CD on, CD, DVD on, about her story. But tell me a little bit about her background. We'll know about that, but about probably Dino and
the way I sort of in the year 1963, I was signed at EMI, and then was La Voce del Padrone. And so when I was signed there, I recorded 2 of my own songs. So then, of course, she had a radio program, as also the other people having programs. Everybody had to try to get my disc. It was very hard to get, being an Australian company, you know.
In those days, everything was hard to get if you're a migrant, mate, let me tell you. We won't take it any further, but it was very hard. And this is what makes it interesting, that she broke down the barriers of getting a radio show on commercial radio. And what's most important, #1 in Sydney.
On 2SM.
And 2CH.
Then was 2SM, 2KY, 2CH.
In between the dog races, that's what I remember.
No, that was the last of it.
That was amazing, honestly. Amazing. She never gave up. She never gave up, and that was just, she left that legacy to us. Yep.
We had a fun. She was a dynamic person in the community.
Yes.
And you know how I can actually try to get across to our English guests today. Let me say this to all the English-speaking people out there. If I ask this question, if you love your cricket in Australia, who is the best cricketer in Australia? I'm sure they'll put up their hands and say Sir Donald Bradman. Well, that's Mama Lena to the Italians.
Yes.
That's how big Mama Lena was.
Oh, well, yeah, for all the Italian, Mama Lena was really the icon, and she will always be. That's all.
Yes.
So what I think we'll do, Peter, any other thing, what about DINO? He had so much to do with her life, didn't he? He actually produced it all. And I don't know the background of that, but you try to fill me in with that. DINO was the producer.
She was producing, along with a DJ from the station. They were helping her, but the whole program and also DINO was spending night after night to get news from overseas.
That's right. You couldn't get it.
Like all the news recording via onde corte. However, he was preparing the whole program, and Mama Lena was putting on air fantastically. Yeah.
Because the idea of it was that the Italian migrants wanted to actually understand what was happening in their hometown or home country. So they went out.
Oh, she was coming from Bergamo.
Yep.
They both come from Bergamo. As a matter of fact, in Bergamo, they nominate one street on Maria Maddalena Gustin.
Oh, that's so nice.
Those are the type of things that people aren't realising. So what we're going to do, Peter, we're going to put on that track of yours, which
Homage of Mama Lena, eh?
Yep, which is I'll just get the track here, and we'll key it up.
A tribute to Mama Lena, yeah.
And we'll get it going. Hopefully this is right. Let's say 3, 6.
The song simply is in Italian.
Yep.
The song simply says, what she's really doing at the radio. That's all for the Italians.
Okay, so
beautiful.
I'll introduce that. This is Peter Ciani's version. Not version, he wrote it and he produced it. And it was specially written for Mama Lena on her birthday. And it went very big in all the Italian community. Omaggio of Mama Lena. Have a listen, and then we'll put on the 25 minutes CD, DVD about Mama Lena's life. Now, I want to thank SBS. One thing I want to do here, because it's very important, thank SBS because they put it together, and I actually got a copy of this in one of, believe it or not, the State Library.
Oh, wow.
That's where it was, because it was produced for SBS, but they put it in all the libraries about the life of Mama Lena. So thank you to them. And do you remember that night? Do you remember that night, Peter? I'll remind you, because you probably were so busy doing the show. SBS came to our studios and they took film. They filmed Mama Lena in the 2RDJ studios with us, and they were putting together a documentary which ended up being this. And if the people actually get a DVD of this from one of the libraries or whatever, they'll actually see young Dominic, which they won't want to see what he looks like, and Peter Ciani, Mama Lena and DINO in the studios, and they were filming this part of the show in our 2RDJ studios. So that's something to remember. Do you remember that, Peter?
Yes.
Okay, let's kick it off, and we'll be back in about 25 minutes' time.
Da sempre tu sei stata la vera identità vita, la mamma più ideale della comunità. Oh mamma Maddalena, chi mai ti scorderà? Sarai nei nostri cuori fino all'eternità. Di mamma come te al mondo non ce n'è. Tu sei così sincera, sei la regina della bontà. Oh mamma Maddalena, noi ti vogliamo bene, come una grande famiglia, siamo cresciuti con te. Erano tempi duri, quelli di 30 anni fa, e tu ci confortavi con tanta fedeltà. Così sei diventata mamma di tutti noi, l'esempio del futuro dell'italianità. Di mamma come te al mondo non ce n'è. Tu sei così sincera, sei la regina della bontà. Oh mamma Maddalena, noi ti vogliamo bene, come una grande famiglia, siamo cresciuti con te. Torna alla radio, torna, parlaci ancora un po', con la tua voce calda, come 30 anni fa. Oh mamma Maddalena, chi mai ti scorderà? L'immagine sei stata dell'italianità. Di mamma come te al mondo non ce n'è. Tu sei così sincera, sei la regina della bontà. Oh mamma Maddalena, siamo cresciuti insieme, come una grande famiglia, siamo cresciuti con te. Oh mamma Maddalena, siamo cresciuti insieme, come una grande famiglia, siamo cresciuti con te.
Benché il nostro Natale australiano sia molto diverso per clima e per abitudini, cerchiamo di vivere queste giornate di vigilia con lo stesso spirito, con la stessa morale.
My mother was born in 1914 in a small town of Azzone in the Apennine Mountains of northern Italy.
Alberto, you're a father again!
She was christened Maria Maddalena Morelli. When she was just a few years old, her mother died. And when she was 7, Maddalena also lost her father in the disaster of the DINO dam. When the collapsed dam flooded and destroyed a whole town, Maddalena witnessed the tragedy, and her terror for water lasted all her life. She never allowed my father, who loved the sea, to live where he could see water. That terrible day changed her life. Her older brothers and sisters could not care for the young Maddalena, and they arranged for her to board in a convent where she stayed until the end of her secondary studies. Maddalena, or Lena, as she was called, loved studying and planned to become a teacher. And so, when she had finished school, she enrolled in the Ca' Foscari University in Venice to study languages.
I only remember that I was very upset because I haven't got the mother, I haven't got the father, and then just to carry on my life because the sister was looking after me, and then I started to study because I said if I can have some diploma or I can have some title, you know, probably I can go my life. But, you know, that age is very difficult to remember. And then I start my study in Venice. I work in studying, and then we had the first life in Venice.
Unfortunately, in 1940, just before she could graduate, Italy was at war. During the war, the authorities had encouraged young ladies to write to lonely soldiers, and Lena, being the kind person that she was, responded to the letters of a young soldier from Trieste. At the time, he was in Sicily. He was waiting with his platoon to be sent to join the Italian troops in Africa.
I was a soldier, in Sicily.
DINO Gustin, my father, was a highly creative journalist and author. He was a prolific writer and wrote Lena a letter a day. And as fate would have it, he never made it to Africa, and just as well, because only a few from his platoon ever came back. In December 1941, he and Lena were married in Azzone, the town where Lena was born.
I get married, and then he was a very good one. I was very happy, very lucky to be married.
Was a very nice person. Is with her parents, but she still work and study at the University of Ca' Foscari.
Their start to married life was very sad. First, the horrors of war, and then the loss of their firstborn, Alberto, from meningitis. At the time of Alberto's death, I was 6 months old, and my brother Roberto was born a year later. Post-war Italy had little to offer, and in 1956, Dad decided that his family would migrate to Australia.
I talked to my husband, I said, everybody go to Australia, what we can try to do? And then he was thinking and said, oh well, if you try, we try to make an application and see what we can do.
In 56, we leave Italy for Australia.
We left Geneva on the ship Aurelia and landed in Sydney on the 20th of May, 1956.
There was this land which was paved with gold. Kangaroos running everywhere and koalas running around the place. Couldn't wait to come.
Little did we know then that shortly after arriving in Sydney, Mum would become one of the most famous, influential and highly decorated women in Australia. And as it is with most migrant families finding their way in a new land, no opportunity was turned down. Dad immediately found work spray painting fridges, and Mum was probably one of the first baristas in Sydney.
I worked in the shop. I went in Bankstown. I went to the shop, and then I saw the coffee machine. It was the first one, you know, to make the machine. And I went to the shop, and then I said, I want a coffee. He said, nobody can do it because nobody can do it. I can do it. And then they said, you can do the, yeah, I can do the coffee because I know, you know. And then I started, and I worked there in that coffee for more than 2 years.
This happened in a coffee shop in Bankstown where we lived at the time. My mother saw a brand new espresso machine. She was desperate for a good Italian coffee. She walked in, and as she did not speak one word of English, gestured that she would like an espresso. Unfortunately, her anticipation was very short-lived. The owner of the coffee shop had absolutely no idea how to operate the machine, And so Mum showed him. And not only did she get her good espresso, she was hired on the spot to make proper espresso coffee for his customers and wash the dishes. 6 months after her arrival in Sydney, Lena had a chance meeting with Evasio Costanzo, who was the editor at the time of the Italian newspaper La Fiamma. When he heard Lena speak, he asked her bluntly if her written Italian was as good as her spoken word. She said yes, and he asked her to write something for him and, then and there, offered her a job. So my mother became agony aunt to thousands of lonely Italian migrants desperately in need of comfort and guidance in this new and strange land. At first La Fiamma contracted her to write 1 page a week, but her popularity grew so quickly that soon she was writing 3 pages a week. By then she had left the coffee shop in Bankstown and had become secretary to the Capuchin Fathers in Leichhardt. Her job was to type the Sunday Mass and give assistance to anyone who came for help. At the time, the Capuchin Fathers had 1-hour radio program on 2SM, the Italian Hour, and the head of the Capuchins, Father Anastasio, asked Lena to take over the radio program. It was just what my father needed. It didn't take long for his creativity and brilliance to be set in motion. The Italian Hour began to sparkle. It started playing the latest Italian music, it was full of topical news, and the contest, well, they kept everyone involved. Luckily, my mother had a wonderful radio voice, and as her popularity grew, she was swamped with mail. But DINO was not happy. That was because the Italian Hour was pre-recorded on Thursday and went to air on Saturday. To him, it lacked vigor and spontaneity, and the news was stale. DINO had big plans and had to find another venue in order to create the kind of radio programs that would totally involve their listeners. Lena asked Father Anastasio to release her from her contract. He agreed, as long as Lena could find her own replacement. And, as it happened, a few months earlier, Lena had asked his approval to employ a newly arrived Franca delle Piane, who interestingly became the politician Franca Arena in later years. Franca was to assist Lena with the typing of the Sunday Mass and general administration work. The year was 1959, and it was a period of high unemployment which coincided with the arrival of the brideships. And Lena was busy finding work for the unemployed and placing the potential brides in suitable accommodation. She needed all the help she could get, and Lena knew that Franca was capable of taking over the broadcasting and taught her the ropes. Lena's last program on the Italian Hour on 2SM has 2 announcers. Halfway through the program, Lena hands over to Franca and bids her 2SM listeners goodbye. In the meantime, my parents had gone to several radio stations and found that 2CH was willing to give them airtime. The condition was that Lena and DINO would find the advertisers and be paid on a percentage of advertising revenue. And the rest is history. For the next 14 years, Lena and DINO made radio history. My father insisted that Italian migrants needed to hear fresh news from Italy. 2CH helped them source a powerful shortwave radio receiver, which, by the way, is now permanently exhibited at the offices of Radio Italia in Leichhardt. And with this radio receiver, DINO would get up at 4:30 every morning and tune in to the Italian news service, which transmitted for Italians abroad. The reception was usually appalling, but he recorded the news as best he could. He would then transcribe them, and my mother would read them that night on radio.
Every morning, get up early, I prepare the news from Italy. You know, it's a short word, but very, very hard to pick up.
DINO was adamant that the music on the programs had to be the latest and the most modern. So, Lena and DINO wrote to every record label in Italy and requested that they be sent the latest releases. they received records by the thousands.
And my mother gave herself 100% to other people. It wasn't always appreciated. Other times people were actually demanding that things would be done for them without them helping themselves. So the sense of responsibility wasn't there in their eyes. Here I am, I've come, I'm a victim of an earthquake, or I'm a victim of a flood, or I'm a victim of whatever, of society, you have to help me. And my mother would help. And then, of course, the sheer frustration of it. I mean, she'd never go to bed before 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning.
When Italian pop idols and movie stars visited Sydney, their schedule had to include a visit to the radio station for an interview with Lena. We have stars like Gina Lollobrigida, Walter Chiari, whom you may recall as the star of their Weird Mob, singers like Peppino Di Capri and Celentano, to name just a few. They all appeared as guests on Lena's radio programs. Such was the appeal of the programs on 2CH that they grew from 1 hour once a week to a total of 12 hours a week. Practically every night, Italians could listen to my mother, and reception in those years was fantastic. I believe that they could hear her as far as Noumea in the north and Adelaide in the west.
Mamma Lena, la mia mamma sei tu. Mamma Lena, la mia mamma sei tu.
In 1965, Nino Cavallaro wrote a little song called Mamma Lena. It told of how important it was for new migrants to hear Lena's voice every night, to hear the music and news from their homeland, and from that moment on, Lena was to become Mamma Lena, mother of Italians in Australia.
Nostalgica di noi italiani, e la speranza che un giorno poter ritornare, e la tua voce alla radio che parla ogni sera, dolce, soave, sincera, voce di mamma, sei tu, oh Mamma Lena.
In 1969, for the 10th anniversary of Mamma Lena's radio programs on 2CH, DINO produced a booklet called Arrivederci Roma, in which Mr. Huntley, 2CH manager at the time, wrote,
"These 10 years have been a rewarding experience when I have seen the programs grow from a small beginning into an important facet of station activity. During this period, I have seen reluctance from those in authority to accept bilingual programs on Australian commercial radio develop into a happy relationship with the Australian Broadcasting Control Board and the Federal Department of Immigration and Education. 2CH is now permitted to program a total of 12.5% of its weekly transmission hours in this area, while the generally accepted level for all other stations is 2.5%. This happy relationship was the result of the excellent way in which Mr. Philip Jeeves, our program director, and the two people responsible for the program, DINO and Lena Gustin, have worked for the benefit of this section of our migrant audience in helping to assimilate them in their new surroundings."
At the time, my mother was receiving more than 2,000 letters a week, prompting a snippet in the Sunday Telegraph on the 21st of March 1965 by Sue, and in brackets the girl who gets around, says, in which Sue wrote, "I bet you can't guess who receives more fan mail than any other radio personality in Sydney. Her name is Lena Gustin, the newsreader on 2CH's Italian radio program. Her weekly mail averages over 2,000 letters." And it didn't matter how badly addressed the envelopes were, even if they only contained just one word, Lena, or Mamma Lena, or Arrivederci Roma, sort of broken up in many pieces, they were delivered. In 1972, 2CH announced that they would change its programming format and stop all foreign language broadcasting. My parents had to find another home for their programs and advertisers. And 2KY agreed to give them as much airtime in the evenings as they had at 2CH, But there was a caveat. The Italian programs had to be shared with the horse and dog races, and if that's not multiculturalism, I don't know what is.
È Natale per tutti amici italiani in Australia. Natale per
I remember
voi
very
che
clearly
siete
asking my grandmother when I was about 6, what do the Australians that want to listen to these race calls think about these Italians talking in between their race calls? And it was quite interesting because my grandmother looked quite astonished at me and she said, no, this is our program. And it's their race calls that interrupt our program. And at the time I thought she was just kidding herself. But I've actually thought about it, in later years, and I think that's what Mama Lena represented to them. It's basically a sense of a security and an ownership, a sense of being attached to a wider community that made them feel very comfortable.
Despite this strange marriage, the popularity of the Italian programs continued to grow, and after only 4 weeks, a memo to staff by the station manager, Mr. A.G. Ireland, says it all.
For your information, here is a breakdown of the first survey for 1974. There is no need for me to elaborate on the results. The figures speak for themselves. The only marked increase in listening audience, and thank God, was the Monday to Thursday night Italian sessions, which stopped our overall percentage dropping below approximately 3.1%.
The 1972 decision by 2CH to terminate its nightly foreign language broadcasts prompted my mother to write to the Honourable A. Grasby, Minister for Immigration at the time, requesting the establishment of an ethnic radio station. What followed was the establishment of a subcommittee of the New South Wales Migrant Task Force by Mr. Grasby to investigate the need for an ethnic broadcasting service. The ethnic radio experiment was started in Sydney and Melbourne in June 1975 and proved highly successful. Today, the evidence of this is the multitude of foreign language radio stations, including the Special Broadcasting Service, or as we know it, SBS. However, Mama Lena's impact on the migrant community extended much further than the establishment of ethnic radio and TV. We do need to remember that most of my mother's broadcasting career was well before the existence of services like Centrelink, the Ethnic Affairs Commission, and all the other migrant bodies we have today. Among the many advertisers on her programs, she had half-an-hour segments by the Commonwealth Bank and HCF. She also arranged for the Department of Education to teach basic English through her programs. Single-handedly, my mother provided the social services, welfare and education that many of these new citizens desperately needed. She found them jobs, she lobbied and badgered ministers and bureaucrats for migrant assistance, and she also influenced changes to the family reunion laws. Mum helped new migrants buy homes and apply for loans. She taught them how to access health care services and raised tens of thousands of dollars for natural disaster victims in Italy and Australia. From 1957 to the late 1990s, my parents were the focal point of the Italo-Australian community in Sydney. They organised dozens of functions, balls, talent quests, contests and sponsor events. In 1979, to celebrate the International Year of the Child, DINO organised a multinational mini-festival at the Sydney Town Hall, inviting groups of children from all ethnic communities to participate. Mama Lena and DINO launched many careers. They helped countless new businesses and products establish themselves in Australia. Today some of those businesses are household names: Nick Scali, Victoria Coffee, Cerrone Jewelry, just to name a few.
Lena was a president of many associations, ANFE, Sorella Radio.
Mama Lena was president and founder of many Italian assistance organizations in Australia and headed the ladies' committees of the now defunct Appia Club. In 1978, Mama Lena was asked by Prime Minister Fraser to be part of the National Women's Advisory Council as its Ethnic Affairs Advisor. a position she held, together with Quentin Bryce, the now Governor-General, for more than 2 years, while at the same time fulfilling her radio, social and assistance obligations.
We say in the 70s, why we don't do what childcare or something for the kids?
As far back as 1972, my parents had the idea of building a childcare centre for the community. They established a committee, and after years of frustrations, fundraising and battles with council, the Sorella Radio Childcare Centre, which then became the Mama Lena Childcare Centre, was completed and opened in Fairfield in 1983. A wing was added in 2000, and today the centre has a capacity for 65 children from birth to preschool. The centre, at this moment, is now part of the Roly-Poly group of childcare centres. In 1985, at the age of 71, Mum suffered a heart attack and had to go to hospital for a double bypass. Unfortunately, her recovery was long and slow, and by the time she was ready to return to radio, events that my parents had set in motion years earlier had overtaken her. By now, there was a dedicated Italian radio station, now known as Rete Italia, broadcasting to the Italian community. But my mother's involvement with the Italian community did not stop. Dad had too many projects waiting in the wings to allow her time for rest. In 1988, for Australia's bicentenary, DINO launched his book 70 anni di ricordi in due mondi, 70 years of memories in 2 countries, Italy and Australia. The 714-page book chronicles my parents' involvement in the activities of the Italian community in New South Wales from 1956 to 1988.
I make the story 12 years ago, where he born, when came to Australia. We tell the story, many, hundred. We call, they come from nothing.
The book features the lives and achievements of hundreds of Italian migrants who made Australia home. In the early 90s, Mama Lena was the president of the Ladies' Committee of the Appia Club. The club's financial survival was crucial, so gala balls, beauty competitions, bingo afternoons, talent quests, etc. were all part of the activities the Ladies' Committee helped organize. And in 1995, Mama Lena and DINO mobilized the Ladies' Committee of the Appia Club and hundreds of other Italian clubs and associations into signing a petition against the removal of the teaching of Italian in secondary schools. The Australia-wide petition collected 40,000 signatures, and it was presented to the then Federal Minister for Education, the Honourable John Dawkins, who, shortly after, announced that his government would not remove the teaching of Italian from the curriculum. The petition was a major victory for my parents and the community, but sadly not even they were able to save the Appia Club, which closed its doors permanently in 1996.
Alive 90.5, this is the Hit Mix Show right through till 12 o'clock, and of course that's the story of Mama Lena. And she was right about the Appia Club. It got closed down, but it was a great club at the time. Back with Angelina Rossi and Peter Ciani.
Yes, I just want to say thank you so much, Dom, for including me in this beautiful tribute to Mama Lena. I feel so honoured and privileged to be here.
And I think
from me too. I remember the last show we had at Appia Club, that we were trying to save the club. And there was even the Prime Minister was there. Prime Minister with his wife and the tribe, they're all there. But there was no way we could do anything, yeah.
Yeah, she was certainly an enigma in the Italian community, and I tell you what, she was such a tiny lady, wasn't she? I couldn't believe how tiny she was at the time. Okay, Peter, thank you for being on air. I hope you enjoyed it, and she deserves the 20 years recognition, our very own late and great Mama Lena.
I had a great feeling, as you know, for Mama Lena, and I thank you very much for doing this, for remembering doing this anniversary, of her death. It's really, it's good to summary. It's fantastic. It was fantastic. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Angelina. And I'm going to leave you with a track that off Mama Lena's greatest hits. Can you believe it? And this was the original version of Dominic Vozzo. Tell me who it is.
Volare. Oh, Volare. I didn't know which one you were going to pick.
The original.
Volare. And you're listening to Alive 90.5. Your
the original.
Sound, your community. Ciao a tutti.
Penso che un sogno così non ritorni mai più. Mi dipingevo le mani e la faccia di blu. Poi d'improvviso venivo dal vento rapito e incominciavo a volare nel cielo infinito. Volare, oh, cantare, oh, nel blu dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù. E volavo felice più in alto del sole ed ancora più su. Mentre il mondo pian piano spariva lontano laggiù. Una musica dolce suonava soltanto per me. Volare, oh, cantare, oh, nel dipinto di blu, felice di stare lassù.